Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor. Now, Pak PM Nawaz Sharif has rigged up Kashmir at the United Nations. Well, that is the big story that we'll be looking at. Also, we will be looking closely at Bihar as BJP is to release a vision document today, which is likely to offer sops for all sections of the society. Let us begin with this morning's headlines. Pakistan raises Kashmir issue at United Nations General Assembly. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif offers 4-point peace plan, including demilitarizing Kashmir to resolve conflict. India's sharp response to Sharif's statement. MEA says deterrorizing Pakistan is needed and that Islamabad cannot blame its neighbors for its failed internal policies. BJP to release its vision document for Bihar. Party adopts a strategy similar to Delhi and J&K polls, refrains from bringing out a manifesto. US and Russian military agree to talks hours after Russia launched its first airstrikes in Syria. Both sides differ over role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. 7 killed and over 50 injured as multiple parcel bombs ripped through southern China. Rare explosions come on the eve of China's National Day celebrations. Well, our top focus, Pakistan has once again raised the Kashmir issue at the United Nations. Now, addressing the UN General Assembly, Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif proposed a 4-point peace plan for resolving the issue. Now, India in response has said Pakistan cannot blame its neighbors for the failure of its internal policies.
Pakistan once again using the UN forum to rake up the Kashmir issue. Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif told the UN General Assembly that the non-resolution of the Kashmir issue reflects the failure of the world body. He further added that cooperation, not confrontation, should define India-Pakistan relationship.
Wisdom dictates that our immediate neighbor refrains from fomenting instability in Pakistan. The two countries should address and resolve the causes of tension and take all possible measures to avert further escalation.
Nawaz Sharif also said that normalizing relations with India has been his priority since he assumed office. In this regard, he proposed what he termed a 4-point peace initiative. Foremost in this regard is a formalization of the 2003 border ceasefire.
I want to use the opportunity today to propose a new peace initiative with India, starting with measures that are the simplest to implement. 1. We propose that Pakistan and India formalize and respect the 2003 understanding for a complete ceasefire on the line of control in Kashmir. For this purpose, we call for UNMOGIP's expansion to monitor the observance of the ceasefire.
Next in line was the need to refrain from the use or threat of use of force.
2. We propose that Pakistan and India reaffirm that they will not resort to the use or the threat of use of force under any circumstances. This is a central element of the UN Charter.
The third proposal was met with a strong response from India.
3. Steps must be taken to demilitarize Kashmir.
External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Vikas Swarup tweeting, "To demilitarize Kashmir is not the answer. To deterrorize Pakistan is. Instability arises from its breeding of terrorists. Blaming neighbors is not a solution." Sharif's fourth proposal was the withdrawal from the Siachen Glacier.
4. Agree to an unconditional mutual withdrawal from Siachen Glacier, the world's highest battleground. And easing of threat perceptions through such peace efforts will make it possible for Pakistan and India to agree on a broad range of measures to address the peril posed by offensive and advanced weapons systems.
The Pakistani Prime Minister was all praise for China in his address, particularly appreciating the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is being objected to by India as it passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He described it as an inspiring model of South-South cooperation that should be emulated. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And this is the MEA's reaction to Sharif's statement at the UN. Now, India says it will exercise its right to reply at the United Nations.
मैंने ट्वीट्स के माध्यम से कुछ जवाब तो दे दिए हैं और मैंने ये भी कहा था कि अगर कुछ अनएक्सेप्टेबल रेफरेंसेस पाकिस्तान करेगा तो हम राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज करेंगे। तो मैं आज आप लोगों को कंफर्म कर रहा हूं कि हम अपना राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं।
All right, let's get a perspective on that story. Mr. Pushpesh Pant, who is a former professor of diplomatic studies at the JNU, is now joining us on the phone line. Good morning, Mr. Pant, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, Mr. Pant, Pakistan Prime Minister has raked up Kashmir on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly, even going to the extent of comparing Kashmir with Palestine. How do you look at this development?
I think it's laughable, and I think it was only expected. After Mr. Modi's Craig-like diplomacy at the United Nations, the Pakistan is left with no option but to make routine clichatic claims about Kashmir, which nobody outside India is even bothered to look at or think about. So I think we in India have understandable reasons to be concerned about Pakistani machinations in Jammu and Kashmir and the terrorism which they foment from their side of the border. But I don't think that anybody else is going to take Mr. Sharif seriously. Look at his 4 points. He goes back decades and more to 2003, and much water has flown in Jhelum, Chenab, Satluj, any other river on the Indo-Pak side, that Pakistan has been systematically exposing India to terrorist attacks. And there is no point talking about demilitarization, where Pakistan has opted for the indirect terroristic warfare against India, and the whole world has witnessed it. And I think it is laughable when Mr. Sharif says India fomenting instability in Pakistan. Pakistan has sown the seeds of terrorism, and now it is reaping a very bloody harvest. I mean, I think Americans know it. I mean, who fertilize the crop of Taliban in Pakistan. And I think these issues you can say are clichatic parroting of well-known positions. And when Mr. Nawaz Sharif makes any offer or initiative, the world is also witness to how easily he retracts that the moment he is back on Pakistani soil. I mean, his negotiations with the Indian Prime Minister on various fora have led to no result whatsoever at all. And I think praising China, having given them access to occupied territory which India claims legitimately as its own. And I think, there's no point talking about these things or taking Mr. Sharif seriously.
And Mr. Pant, now MEA has responded to the ball really lobbed by Sharif at India. But Pakistan will also get appropriate response when Sushma Swaraj will address the General Assembly today?
I'm sure Ms. Sushma Swaraj would be given a fitting right to reply, because as Mr. Vikas Swarup has already made clear that India will exercise its right to reply. But what I would again underline is that nobody outside India and Pakistan is worried about these debating points that we score against each other. I am happy enough to realize that the government of India has a turn about defending Kashmir and defending Kashmir against absolutely unwarranted terrorist attacks launched from Pakistan again and again. And I think the Pakistanis have to be isolated. Unfortunately, with continued Chinese support, they continue to be not quite pariahs, which they deserve to be in international fora.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Pant, for joining us this morning. But India has said that de-terrorize Pakistan, not demilitarize Kashmir. That is a very appropriate response that MEA has given. Let's now take some news from POK, that is Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, where violent protests have erupted against the Pakistani establishment. The protesters are demanding freedom. Now, in the video exclusively available with the private news channel CNN IBN, the youths are heard shouting slogans of Azadi. Well, as per the reports, the people are angry at the lack of development in the region and are heard demanding jobs and other basic rights. The protests against the Pakistani establishment were reportedly held in several areas of POK, including Muzaffarabad, Gilgit and Kotli. They are also heard talking about human rights violation and misbehavior with their women. The youths are also seen in the video saying that those who refuse to join jihad from POK are picked up by the ISI. Protesters are also said on camera that the Pakistani establishment had no right to use force on them. The video clearly shows that anti-Pakistan protests are on the rise in POK and the Pakistani forces using brutal force to quell rebellion in the region. The POK residents added that India was better than the neighboring country. The report said that the protests were not sporadic or one-off, as the crowds seen in the video were huge, and also there was a major presence of the army and the police in the region to control them.
This disturbing video about the atrocities committed by the Pakistani forces against the innocent people of the occupied area of Jammu and Kashmir is very disturbing. It has exposed the duplicity of Pakistan.
Pakistan has given us lectures over the years. Now the truth of how Pakistan conducts itself has become apparent, how it's imposed itself on people who do not want to associate with Pakistan. Now that's become apparent, and I'm glad that this will be available to the world to see every time Pakistan speaks against India.
If you compare the so-called Azad Kashmir and the freedom of the people there, they are living in the 16th century, in the 18th century. They're living in the Stone Age. There's no freedom. They do not have a country. And Pakistan called them Azad Kashmir and controls them, controls all their machineries.
What has happened now actually ought to have happened several years or decades earlier. People of Gilgit, Baltistan, Hunza and another area, Nagar, which constitute northern areas, through modern connectivity, through modern media, have been seeing the type of progress that has been made in India and the Indian part of Kashmir, as against no worthwhile or significant improvement in their lives on their side of the border.
And in External Affairs, the Minister Sushma Swaraj will be addressing the UNGA General Debate in New York today. All eyes are on what India's response will be to Pakistan breaking up the Kashmir issue at the United Nations. On Wednesday, Sushma Swaraj had a packed schedule. On day one of her US visit, she met the foreign ministers of the BRICS nations, which backed reforms in the UN. She also held trilateral talks with US and Japan to push for India's membership in APEC and discussed Prime Minister Modi's visit to the UK next month with the British Foreign Secretary.
India's push for a place in UNSC got backing from the BRICS nations when External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj met her counterparts in New York. Despite differences over India's bid, China and Russia were among the nations to reaffirm the need for UN reform to make it more representative. They also discussed the agenda for the next BRICS summit to be held in India next year.
For us, it's very significant because India is going to be the next chair of BRICS commencing February 2016. So it's an important meeting from that point of view for EM to hear the views of the other foreign ministers on how they see the BRICS evolving, what are the emergent needs, what more needs to be done.
India also pushed for an early membership in the APEC once Sushma held talks with her US and Japanese counterpart in a trilateral meet. Sushma raised the issue of maritime security and freedom of navigation amid the South China Sea crisis.
We see a strong connect between our discussions today and India's Act East policy. It is in this strategic context that India seeks an early membership of APEC. I would like to work with both of you for India's early membership of APEC.
In other meetings, Swaraj met with her counterparts from Caribbean Community and Maldives. India and CARICOM held talks regarding common aspirations for accelerated economic development and eradication of poverty. India also offered assistance to Caribbean countries in many areas comprising of capacity building, IT, pharmaceuticals, small and medium enterprises. Sushma also met British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond to discuss Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to UK in November. This will be Modi's first UK visit since coming to power last year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And in breakfast news, we'll take a very quick break. But coming up after that, diesel prices hiked by 50 paise per litre from midnight, but no change in petrol rates. Details to follow. Stay with us.
As science beckons India into the future, Rajya Sabha Television partakes the responsibility, bringing technology to the Indian people.
Let's take a look at various important science events in the country,
monitoring scientific advances as they unravel.
Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has proposed a complete ban on fossil fuels.
Welcome to Eureka.
Interviewing the country's greatest minds. Project the power of science to benefit and transform India. Rajya Sabha Television, Democracy at Work.
Now, news from poll-bound Bihar. Well, the BJP will present its vision document on Bihar's development ahead of assembly polls, with party chief Amit Shah and Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, among other leaders, expected to release it in Patna today. By deciding to release a vision document instead of a manifesto, which ethically binds the BJP to deliver promises made by the party, BJP has adopted a strategy similar to what it did in the previous assembly polls in Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir. The special package of 1.25 lakh crore rupees will also figure in the vision document to lend authenticity to BJP's thinking of taking the state out of the backward club. The document will have sector-wise incentives and schemes that the BJP intends to offer if it comes to power in the state. Now, BJP chief Amit Shah, who is camping in Patna since Tuesday, reiterated his party's stand on caste-based reservation, saying that we support the current reservation policy and we are against any kind of reconsideration on this matter. The rival Grand Alliance has already announced its vision document, where the Bihar Chief Minister and JDU leader Nitish Kumar laying emphasis on women and youth that form a large section of the voter base. Now, two scholars from the top American think tank Carnegie Endowment for International Peace have said that the upcoming Bihar Assembly elections this month will be the biggest electoral test for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, Milan Vaishnav and Saksham Khosla from the Endowment for International Peace wrote in an op-ed yesterday, and I quote, "No matter what the voters of Bihar decide, the ramifications will be felt far beyond the state's borders. The Bihar election, which begins on 12th of October and concludes on 8th of November, will be the biggest electoral test for the Modi-led BJP government thus far. If it prevails, this victory could provide the central government with a new momentum. A win would bring a BJP closer to a Rajya Sabha majority and boost its chances ahead of the state elections in 2016 and 2017. Quote, unquote. Now, the scholars also mentioned that the election could also make or break the careers of Chief Minister Nitish Kumar and his newfound ally Lalu Prasad. And in other news, the diesel price has been hiked by 50 paise per litre from midnight, but there will be no change in petrol rates. In Delhi, diesel will now cost 44.95 rupees per litre. At the last revision on 1st of September, petrol price was cut by 2 rupees per litre and diesel by 50 paise. Oil companies had, at the last scheduled review on 16th of September, put off a 98 paise per litre hike in petrol and a 2.28 rupees a litre increase in diesel rates necessitated due to firming global oil rates, apparently because of assembly elections in Bihar. Now, this is the first increase in diesel prices in 4 months. Diesel price was hiked by 2.71 rupees per litre on 16th of May. Rates have on consecutive fortnight declined. Petrol price since mid of May have been cut by a cumulative 5.09 rupees per litre in Delhi. And in the other big story of the day, Apex Transporters Body AIMTC is lending an indefinite nationwide strike of truckers beginning today. The strike is demanding scrapping off for the present toll system and one-time payment of taxes. Now, despite the government's appeal for calling off the stir, the body has assured that the essential services will not be hit by the strike. Now, talks with the government on Wednesday had failed to yield any result. Now, let's take a look at what events are lined up for the day in day ahead. President Pranab Mukherjee will present the 3rd National Award for Senior Citizens on the occasion of International Day of Older Persons at a function in New Delhi today. Minister of Social Justice and Empowerment, Thawar Chand Gehlot, will preside over the function. The Supreme Court will hear the plea of AAP MLA Somnath Bharti today, seeking protection from arrest in a domestic violence and an attempt to murder case in which the Delhi High Court has rejected his petition for anticipatory bail. The Supreme Court had on 28th of September directed Somnath Bharti to surrender before the police in connection with the case against him by his wife. Now, India will submit its post-2020 climate action plan to the UN body in Bonn, specifying what the country will do to fight the threat of climate change. Now, hours after its submission within the informal deadline of 1st of October, the country will announce the plan on 2nd of October, coinciding it with the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. A crucial United Nations summit will begin in December to agree a global deal on slowing global warming. Now, China is celebrating its 66th National Day, a commemoration of the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. The firework displays on an immense scale are staged in many major cities across the country and Beijing, and puts also an interminably long parade which is beamed to televisions in all corners of the country. Now on to some international news. As many as 15 blasts from parcel explosives rocked southern China on Wednesday on the eve of country's National Day celebrations, killing at least 7 people and leaving more than 50 injured. Now, according to the official news agency Xinhua, the blasts first struck a township in Liushan, a county in southern Zhuang province. Later, the blast hit the country's capital, county's capital. The officials have not made statements on the cause of the blasts, which appeared coordinated with as many as 15 parcel bombs detonating within minutes of each other, according to the media reports. Their explosions were reported on the eve of the National Day, at a time when millions of Chinese travel and for their national holiday. Southern China has seen recent incidents of violence on account of both terrorism and rural social unrest. At least 29 people were killed in a knife attack from the Muslim-majority Xinjiang region on a railway station last year, while explosions struck country government officials in 2011, and which was set off by an aggravated farmer who had lost his land. The explosions come despite a stepped-up security in China to lead up to the National Day. And the US and the Russian military have agreed to hold talks just hours after Russia launched its first airstrikes in Syria. Now, both the sides claim legitimacy for their actions, but they differ over the role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The US has expressed fears that the latest Russian airstrikes were targeting non-IS opponents of the Russians' ally, Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad.
Russia and the United States face off again, this time over the parallel air campaigns against the Islamic State in Syria. Both sides are fighting against a common enemy, but differ in their approach. They've agreed to establish channels of communication to avoid clashing in Syria.
With Secretary Kerry for the, I think, third time in a few days. Today we devoted our meeting to the follow-up of what our presidents agreed when they met here on the 28th of September. The first instruction to us was to make sure that the military of the United States, the coalition led by the United States on the one hand, and the military of the Russian Federation, who now engage in some operations in Syria at the request of the Syrian government, get in touch and establish channels of communications to avoid any unintended incidents.
Kerry said the United States would not object to Russian military action in Syria as long as it was directed against IS and groups linked to Al-Qaeda. But the United States and its allies have raised questions about whether Moscow's main aim is in fact to prop up Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
If Russia's recent actions and those now ongoing reflect a genuine commitment to defeat that organization, then we are prepared to welcome those efforts and to find a way to deconflict our operations and thereby multiply the military pressure on ISIL and affiliated groups. But we must not and will not be confused in our fight against ISIL with support for Assad. Moreover, we have also made clear that we would have grave concerns should Russia strike areas where ISIL and al-Qaeda affiliated targets are not operating.
Russia dismissed any claims by the Pentagon on the airstrikes hitting non-IS targets. Russia has justified its strikes by saying Syria requested its military assistance. The US and its allies have insisted that President Assad should leave office, while Russia has backed him remaining in power.
Обстановка сложилась так, что если мы сегодня не поддержим Асада, еще одна страна ввалится в хаос. И вот эта коричневая чума, фашизм, но уже с некоторым мусульманским оттенком, начнет распространяться по всему миру.
We condemned by all means the Russian airstrikes against civilians, and we urged before that the Russians are intervening Syria not for fighting ISIL. They intervened to prolong the life of Bashar al-Assad and support the continuous killing in daily basis of the Syrian civilians.
Russian officials say they carried out about 20 flights over Syria on Wednesday, hitting 8 Islamic State targets. But other reports suggest the strike caused at least 36 civilian casualties too. Russia's decision to intervene has greatly complicated the situation and probably offers little additional chance of a diplomatic resolution. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And a look at what else is making news across the world in World Wrap. World leaders convened a special meeting at the UN on Wednesday to discuss the growing migrant crisis. They agreed that the global community must help shoulder the burden of the crisis in Europe, but they don't seem to be any further in bringing to forge a clear path forward really on how to alleviate the economic burden of the influx of refugees. Now, Germany said that the resolving root causes is the key, and it urged the leaders to add funding for the humanitarian aid agencies. For the first time ever, the Palestinian flag was raised outside the headquarters of the United Nations in New York on Wednesday. The historic moment came after Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas told the UN General Assembly that the Palestinian Authority was no longer bound by the Oslo Peace Accords. And the Oslo Peace Accords are the series of peace agreements between Israel and the Palestinians signed in the 1990s. The U.S. House of Representatives allowed temporary funds to the U.S. government until 11th of December, averting a midnight shutdown deadline. The House passed the measure by a vote of 277 to 151. The bill was held up by Conservatives' demands to withdraw all federal funds for women's health care provider Planned Parenthood. Now, earlier in the day, the Senate also approved the legislation. The funding bill aims to give congressional negotiators and U.S. President Barack Obama about 10 weeks to work out a longer-term budget deal. Now, Mexico has extradited 13 defendants, including some alleged high-level drug cartel members, to face a U.S. court. These extradited face drug trafficking and homicide charges, amongst a host of others. The former head of the Gulf cartel, George Costilla, alias El Cos, and a major drug trafficker, Edgar, were among the 13. Now, his testimony in the U.S. could prove damaging to officials in Mexico that have been accused of supporting drug gangs. 16 Turkish workers abducted by militants in Iraq arrived back in Turkey to emotional scenes on Wednesday night after more than a month in captivity. The men were snatched on the 2nd of September from a stadium they were building on the outskirts of Baghdad. The attackers were apparently an armed group that used a familiar Shiite Muslim slogan and threatened to attack Turkish interests in Iraq if its demands were not met. Well, that's all in Breakfast News. Thank you so much for watching.